They called me the weakest hunter of all mankind. And they weren't being cruel. They were just being accurate. My name is Sung Jinwoo. E rank. The lowest, most useless rank a hunter can hold. When the gates first tore open and monsters started pouring into our world, some people awakened with incredible powers and became celebrities, heroes, millionaires. And me? I got just enough magic to barely qualify as a hunter, and not one drop more. I crawled into the weakest dungeons humanity had, and I still almost died on nearly every single raid. But I didn't have a choice. My father vanished into a gate years ago and never came back. My mother collapsed into a strange coma called eternal slumber and has been lying in a hospital bed ever since. My little sister Gina is still in school. Someone had to pay for the hospital bills. Someone had to keep the lights on. So the weakest hunter in the world kept walking into dungeons that could kill him, because his family needed the money more than he needed to be safe. This is the story of how that man, the joke, the bottom feeder, the one everyone stepped over, became the single strongest being to ever exist. And it started on the day I should have died. It began as an ordinary D-rank raid. Low danger, low reward, exactly my speed. Our party cleared the dungeon's monsters, and we were about to leave when someone spotted it, a second entrance, hidden deep in the back. A dungeon inside a dungeon. A double dungeon. The stronger hunters wanted the extra loot. We voted. We went in. And that decision killed almost everyone in that room. Inside was a temple. And it was wrong in a way that made my skin crawl before anything even happened. No monsters. No treasure chests. Just a vast stone chamber lined with enormous statues, some holding weapons, some holding instruments, and a wall carved with commandments in a language none of us could read at first. Worship God. Do not disrespect the one you worship. Simple words, if only we'd been able to read them in time. We couldn't. And the moment one of the hunters unknowingly broke a rule, the statues came alive. What followed wasn't a battle. It was a massacre. These things moved faster than anything that size had any right to, and they showed no mercy at all. Hunters were crushed under stone fists, run through with stone spears, thrown across the room like garbage. Screaming, blood, panic. Of the 17 who'd entered that gate, most were dead within minutes. A handful of us survived only by pressing ourselves against a wall, hearts hammering, trying to decode the commandments before the statues turned on us next. We finally understood the rules. We satisfied the conditions to open the exit. But the temple demanded one last price. A final commandment: to open the door and let the survivors leave, one person had to remain behind as a sacrifice. I looked down at myself. One of the statues had already taken my leg. I was bleeding out. Even if I made it through the door, I wasn't sure I'd survive the trip home. Everyone else had someone or something to live for out there, and so did I, but I was the one already dying. So I made the call. I told them to go. I volunteered to stay. As the statues raised their weapons and drove them into me, as my body was thrown around like a broken doll, a window of blue light appeared in the air in front of my eyes. Text only I could see. You have fulfilled the conditions to become a player. Do you accept? I had no idea what it meant. I had seconds left to live and nothing to lose. So I said yes. And then everything went black. I woke up 3 days later in a hospital bed. Alive. Completely healed, even the leg I'd lost was back, whole, like nothing had ever happened. The doctors couldn't explain it. The Hunters Association questioned me, ran their tests, and concluded I was still just a weak rank with nothing suspicious about him. They couldn't have been more wrong. Because floating in the air above my bed was a screen. A glowing window that nobody else could see. It called itself the system. And it told me I had a daily quest. I thought it was a joke. A hallucination, stress, brain damage from the dungeon. So I ignored it, rolled over, and went back to sleep. And that was very nearly the last mistake I ever made. Because when the timer on that daily quest ran out and I hadn't completed it, the system didn't just flash a warning. It punished me. The world dissolved around me and I was ripped out of my own bedroom, dropped into a penalty zone, a scorching, endless desert crawling with monsters, where the only way out was to survive. And my body was still the body of the weakest hunter alive. I couldn't fight what was out there. I could only run, and hide, and crawl, and bleed, hunted across a wasteland by things that wanted to eat me, until I somehow lasted long enough for the penalty to end. I nearly died out there. In what was basically my own private hell, delivered for the crime of hitting snooze. When I finally clawed my way back to reality, I understood something with total clarity. This was not a joke. The system was real, it was always watching, and it did not forgive laziness. So I made a decision that would define the rest of my life. If this thing was going to force me to grow, then I would grow faster and harder than it ever expected. The system uses me? Fine. Then I used the system right back. And here's what made it unlike anything any other hunter on Earth had. Every other awakened person got the strength they got, and that was it. Fixed. Permanent. A B rank stayed a B rank until they died. But the system let me level up. Like a video game. Complete quests, kill monsters, earn experience, gain stat points, and pour them into my body however I chose. For the first time in my life, my weakness wasn't a life sentence. It was a starting line. I did the daily quest every day, the push-ups, the sit-ups, the running, the pain, and the system rewarded me every time with stat points and a full recovery. I got a key to my first instant dungeon, a private dungeon only I could enter, and I cleared it solo. Then a harder one. My body began to change. In a matter of weeks, the frail, sickly man who could barely lift a sword transformed taller, stronger, sharper, until even my own sister looked at me like she didn't recognize me. But I kept it hidden. To the world, I was still Sung Jinwoo, the weakest hunter. I needed money, so I joined a C-rank raid as a lowly porter, hauling gear. And that's where I met Jinho, a good-hearted rookie from a rich family, and where I learned exactly how ugly this world could be. Because our party leader, Hwang Dongsuk, ran a scam that was really a murder scheme. His crew would recruit weak, desperate hunters like me and Jinho, the kind of people nobody would come looking for, bring them deep into a dungeon, and then, once they were somewhere no cameras and no witnesses could reach, they'd kill the weaklings and split their shares of the loot among themselves. It was how Dongsuk had gotten rich. It was how he'd gotten away with it for years. Because who investigates when a worthless ear-rank simply doesn't come home from a dangerous raid? Nobody. That's the whole point. Dungeons kill weak hunters every day. Deep in that insect-infested dungeon, he made his move. He turned on us with a smile, completely relaxed, absolutely certain he was about to murder two helpless men and pocket their money like he'd done to so many before. He had no idea what I'd become. He was looking at the frail porter he'd hired. He didn't know that Porter had been leveling up in secret, clearing solo dungeons, transforming into something that no longer belonged anywhere near the bottom of the rankings. I killed Hwang Dongsuk. I killed every last member of his crew. The predators who'd built their fortune on slaughtering the helpless discovered, in their final moments, that the prey they'd cornered was the single most dangerous thing in that dungeon. It was brutal, and it was necessary, and it was the day the weakest hunter of all mankind crossed a line he could never step back over. I had killed other human beings. And I had felt, underneath the horror of it, exactly how far beyond them I'd already climbed. From there, my rise was so fast that it started to frighten the people at the very top of the hunter world. I climbed from pathetic E-rank strength through numbers that made no sense, not for anyone, and certainly not for the man everyone had already written off as a lost cause. Strange reports started circulating. Impossible clears. Dungeons emptied by a single hunter. The nation's strongest awakened, the great guildmasters, the Hunters Association itself, they all began to notice that something extraordinary was happening around a man who was officially still ranked at the bottom. Some wanted to recruit me. Some wanted to study me. A few, sensing a threat they didn't understand, wanted me gone. And then came the moment that changed everything. The system sent me a special quest, a job change, and without warning, tore me out of the world and dropped me into one of the most brutal instant dungeons I had ever faced. It was a trial built specifically to push me to my absolute breaking point. An endless flood of enemies, knights in heavy armor, mages raining down destruction, assassins striking from the dark, wave after wave after wave, each of them mimicking the fighting styles of foes I'd battled before, like the trial had studied my entire life and built a highlight reel of everyone who'd ever tried to kill me. And the rules were merciless. No items. No shop. No instant escape. No leaving until every enemy was dead. No recovery between fights. Just me, my body, and my blades, against an army designed to grind me down until I collapsed. It was meant to break me. It was meant to be impossible. I refused to break. I fought through all of it, and I didn't just barely survive, I cleared it so thoroughly, so far beyond the trial's expectations, keeping myself alive and finishing faster than the system ever anticipated, that it gave me the maximum possible reward. The system didn't just hand me a new class. It gave me the hidden one necromancer, and then, because I'd exceeded even that, promoted me a second time on the spot, past it, to something far greater. Shadow Monarch. From that moment, I could do something no hunter in history had ever done. I could reach out to the corpses of the monsters, and even the humans I defeated, and command them to rise again as shadows. Not mindless zombies. Loyal soldiers, keeping every bit of the strength and skill they'd had in life, bound to me and me alone, fighting for me without fear and without end. Do you understand what that meant? Every enemy I killed was no longer just a body on the ground. It was a recruit. It was tomorrow's soldier. A single hunter, walking into every battle with an entire army quietly growing behind him. And so I built that army, kill by kill, battle by battle. When an A-rank hunter fell in front of me, I raised him as a shadow and named him Iron, and he became one of my first true soldiers. As I conquered stronger and stronger foes, they knelt and joined the ranks: two knights, beasts, monsters, elite hunters, all of them mine, all of them silent and waiting inside my shadow until I called them out into the light. Think about the poetry of that, for a man like me. I had spent my whole career walking into dungeons beside strangers who would have happily left me behind to die, who did leave people like me behind, over and over. And now I would never enter a dungeon alone again, because I commanded a legion that could not betray me, could not abandon me, could not be bribed or scared away. The loneliest, weakest hunter alive had become the one man on earth who was never truly alone in a fight. I founded my own guild, the Ajin Guild, with Jinwoo at my side as vice master, handling the paperwork and the public face of it, because honestly, I only ever wanted to be inside a dungeon fighting. But everyone who knew the truth understood, the guild's real strength wasn't its roster. It was the shadow army that no rival could see, count, or prepare for. And as I climbed, the questions only grew louder and heavier. Why me? Of all the hunters on Earth, why did the system reach into that dying temple and choose the weakest one alive? What was it actually preparing me for, and who was doing the preparing? Every answer I uncovered led to something bigger, older, and darker than the last. The gates, the monsters, the system itself, none of it was random. None of it was natural. There were forces standing behind the curtain of the entire world. On one side, the monarchs, beings of apocalyptic, world-ending power, each one strong enough to lay waste to civilizations. On the other, the rulers, who opposed them. And these two sides had been locked in a war across countless worlds and countless ages, long, long before Earth ever saw its very first gate crack open in the sky. That ancient, cosmic war had now spread to my world. The gates weren't a mystery of nature, they were a battlefront. And humanity was caught in the middle of a conflict it couldn't even perceive, a species of ants about to be stepped on by giants. At the center of all of it was a truth about myself that I could never have imagined back in that hospital bed, staring at a screen only I could see. The power I'd been given, the throne of shadows, the command over death itself, didn't come from luck, and it didn't come from the system by accident. It came from the greatest being in that entire war. The King of the Dead. The original Shadow Monarch. Ashborn. I hadn't stumbled into strength at all. I had been chosen, groomed, and set on this path from the very beginning, to inherit the throne of shadows and stand against the coming apocalypse. As Ashborn told me, he was the record of my struggles, the evidence of my resistance, the reward of all my suffering. Death itself, eternal rest, and terror, handed to the man who had been willing to die for others. The joke of the hunter world became its final hope. And that's what makes this story hit the way it does. It looks like a simple power fantasy, weakling gets a cheat, weakling gets strong. But underneath, it's about a man who never, ever gave up. Who walked into death for his family when he had nothing. Who was mocked, underestimated, and left for dead, and who answered all of it not with bitterness but with an iron refusal to stay weak. Every level, every shadow, every step up was paid for in blood and fear and stubbornness. They called me the weakest hunter of all mankind. By the end, there wasn't a being in any world, human or monster or god, who could stand against me. I started as the man everyone stepped over. I ended as the Shadow Monarch, the ruler of death, the sovereign of an army of the fallen, the last line between humanity and the end of everything. That's the story of Sung Jinwoo. The weakest hunter who leveled up, alone, all the way to the top of the world.